Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. Today's Question the Narrative video is a bit different from what I've been doing for the past few months even. I didn't want this series to become redundant and I didn't want it to seem like I'm hitting on almost the same topic every single week. And there are so many interesting things to learn about. There are so many interesting things that we have to question or to, just to wonder about. And I thought the Menehune and other little creatures would be fun. So the reason that this topic was brought back into my mind was because someone had actually mentioned the Menehune in one of the comments of my former videos. And I had heard of them before. I actually saw a video or an episode of America Unearthed on which he was exploring some of the supposed construction sites that the Menehune did. And I don't always agree with the findings of America Unearthed, but I still enjoy watching it. But anyway, yeah, I think that Menehune and other little creatures, we don't give them enough thought. And if you think about it, I've done 3 videos on giants, and there are stories of giants all over the world. And there are stories of the flood all over the world. And yeah, there are stories of little creatures in some form or another that are also all over the world. And so we're just going to explore some of those today. And again, I just wanted to touch more on the Menehune just because I have some pictures of some of the things that they were said to have built. So this is actually a book that I have by Steve Quayle, and it really gave me so much information about these little creatures because most of the time we just look at these things as being the stuff of fantasies, mythological things, and yeah, most of them likely are. But Steve Quayle has done so much research into this topic, and I think that if you would read this book, Little Creatures, you would find that some of it is actually pretty convincing. So before I actually get into the Menehune themselves, I just wanted to show you some examples of what we might call little creatures throughout the world. So we have in Scandinavia, like Sweden and Norway and Denmark, there are still people who live there who believe that there are gnomes there. And the reason that I actually found out about this was I was watching another show called Boogeymen. Yes, of course, because it was also about cryptids. And the mayor of a town, I think it was called Seljord in Norway, he talked about gnomes and how they believed that they were still underground there. So we have gnomes in Scandinavia. Then if we move on to Iceland, the lore of elves is so strong in Iceland that, yeah, it says the hidden elves delay road projects. And I'll just read a little bit of this because I thought it was interesting, but it said, in this land of fire and ice, where the fog-shrouded lava fields offer a spooky landscape in which anything might lurk, stories abound of the hidden folk, thousands of elves making their homes in Iceland's wilderness. So perhaps it was only a matter of time before 21st century elves got political representation. Elf advocates have joined forces with environmentalists to urge the Icelandic Road and Coastal Commission and local authorities to abandon a highway project building a direct route from the Alftanes Peninsula, where the president has a home, to the Reykjavik suburb of Gardabear. I apologize if I'm saying any of this wrong. I'm sure that I am. They fear disturbing elf habitat and claim the area is particularly important because it contains an elf church. The project has been halted until the Supreme Court of Iceland rules on a case brought by a group known as Friends of Lava, who cite both the environmental and the cultural impact, including the impact on elves of the road project. The group has regularly brought hundreds of people out to block the bulldozers. And it says, and it's not the first time issues about Holdufolk, Icelandic for hidden folk, have affected planning decisions. So this is also interesting, something that we see an awful lot in not just Western culture. We see stories like this in Africa. We see stories like this in the East. There are stories of these little creatures worldwide. So next here we have the Naripon, real fairy flower pod women. And this one I actually heard of on the TV show. It used to be on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was Destination Truth with Josh Gates. And Yeah, this is supposed to be the photo of a real Nari pond. And I'll just read a tiny bit, just that if you haven't heard of it. 3 hours northeast of Bangkok, Thailand, there have been sightings of the Nari pond, a fairy-like creature that is said to be both plant and animal. Not being taller than 3 feet, the Nari pond have been described as having beautiful female bodies and a sort of organic complexion to help them camouflage into the forest, hence being called the Thai flower pod women. There is a Buddhist legend that I have come across that explains the Naripan as beautiful creatures that would try to distract Buddha from meditation in the daytime, then would hide in the trees after nightfall. It is also believed that the Buddhist god Indra planted about 16 Naripan trees in the Himappan forest to protect Prince Visandara. I can tell there's going to be a lot of really hard names today, who was Buddha in an earlier incarnation. These legends are based on the belief that the Naripan grew as fruit on trees. Within 4 days, they would fall from the tree and become alive and active, but by the week's end, they would wither into a small carcass small enough to hold in your hand. And I believe that I have some other pictures of the Naripan. Okay, so these are all thought to be the Naripan. And one difference that I've noticed between the little creatures and the giants is that there does seem to be more what we would call evidence of giants, but I don't believe they actually were allowed to do a DNA analysis on this. But some people would say that this could be convincing of a Naripan. Just look at some others here. Guess this would be 2 of them here. I don't know. I would love if they would be able to look at, I mean, really, that looks interesting. And I would love if they would be able to do a DNA analysis in these. And to be quite honest, though, how do you even know they would give you the real results? We're at the point now. I say this all the time. We just really can't trust anything anymore. And it's sad that we've reached this state, but unfortunately, it's true. Now, thrown in here with the other little creatures, I will talk about the Atacama skeleton. Now, this is an actual photo of it. And this one, they actually did do a DNA analysis, and it was found. It says the results of his DNA analysis show the skeleton to be human and not of extraterrestrial origin. So it does have human DNA. Some people believe that it has some form of dwarfism and that it might have been a fetus, but I know that that is disputed. I'm just going to try to find some more photos of it that actually show the whole body. Yeah, so you can see right here, that's what it looks like in full. And I actually wanted to read something to you from Steve Quayle's book, Little Creatures. I found it relevant. Belief in little creatures fell to the wayside during the same period that belief in demons and even God dropped away from many intellectual circles. Basically, all things supernatural were expelled from intellectual circles to make way for the various isms, like communism, Nazism, socialism, and humanism, none of which have a place for God or anything else supernatural. Yet today we're seeing that the promises of man-made utopias and heaven on earth were all hollow undertakings. The deaths of untold numbers of innocents were often left in the wake of nations that had the misfortune of adopting one of the governing systems after throwing Christianity under the bus. For that reason, I believe to understand how our world actually operates is essential for returning to reality, a return to the faith that offers mankind an insight into his existence is the path that must be taken, while abandoning those human belief systems that failed and are failing so miserably. This will enable us to regain sanity in our troubled world. The key to realizing how our world works and the invisible powers and hands that operate behind the scenes to control us comes with the acknowledgement that there is a supernatural world that operates within and alongside the physical universe. Once a person comprehends this, the scales can fall from our eyes so that we can see both the dangers that face us as well as the solution to defending ourselves from those unseen supernatural threats. In my studies, I found that if we look beneath the surface of myths, legends, and fairy tales, prying away the embellishments and fabrications, we can gain insight to the reality behind the stories. This often yields an alarming glimpse of the unseen forces that battle to change the destiny of the human race. But it gives a true look at what is happening, and that is invaluable if we are to deal with the dangers these unseen forces may present. So again, that is by Steve Quayle in his Little Creatures book. It is a huge book. Well, not huge. It's probably maybe about the size of phone books in some towns, but it's packed with information and it's so interesting. And it's another thing that really made me want to do a video about these. Now, Steve Quayle did talk a little bit about this skeleton in his book. And he was just talking about why he does not believe that this was a human fetus. And some of the things that he said was that some people believe that the remains are a premature human fetus, but this doesn't explain the lack of a pair of ribs normally found in human beings, or the odd shape of the head, or that the bone growth suggests that the individual was at least 6 to 8 years old when he died. So that was the original assessment. And there's an x-ray of it. And, oops. And I did it again. Save image as. I don't want to save image as. I want to open it. Okay. Anyway, so there we go. So we've got the Atacama skeleton, and apparently it is lacking a pair of ribs. We do see the misshapen skull. I mean, it doesn't look human at all. And even if this were a fetus, usually fetuses are, curled up a little bit from being in utero. The limbs are very straight. Anyway, he also said that some people believe that the mummy is a child who had progeria. Again, this doesn't explain the oddities presented, and there are no genetic markers for these diseases. So this was actually new enough, I should say young enough, that they were able to get the DNA from it. So this isn't something that is like thousands of years old. All right, others believe that the remains are a hoax, but x-rays show that it's an intact skeleton. And of course, if they were able to get DNA from it, that also shows it. But again, you always have to take DNA with a grain of salt nowadays. Some people think the individual suffered from a very severe form of dwarfism. And this is where it's disputed, because what they will tell you is that this was an unborn child who was suffering from dwarfism. But apparently, genetic analysis has not found any genes for dwarfism. So there's a little bit, of a contradiction there. Some people think the creature is an alien, but genetic analysis also disproved this, since the DNA shows a haplotype linked to natives of the west coast of South America. And others think that the creature was an ancient, extinct animal that was previously unknown. So the fact of the matter is that we really don't know what this is. But this just goes to show you, though, that these stories of little creatures may have more to them than what you would originally believe. Another little creature is the Kurupita. That is, let's see, it's Brazilian. It's a mythological creature of Brazilian folklore, and it says the creature blends many features of West African and European fairies, but it was usually regarded as a demonic figure. And what you can see about the Kurupita is that it does have backwards facing feet, and you will find stories of other little creatures lots of them in West Africa of different names. And I believe in the Dominican Republic, they also speak of little men who have backwards facing feet. I'm calling them little, but he doesn't look very little here. So maybe they're not all little. But regardless, it's all things that help me to question the narrative. But now it is time to get to the Menehune, because again, we have some what could be evidence of sites that they built. They were believed to have built temples and waterways and ponds. And so let's just read what this article has to say about the Menehune. So discover the real Menehune of Hawaii's stories and legends. We will start right here. Menehune remain one of Hawaii's enduring mysteries. Are they a mythical race of industrious people, small in stature, who live in Hawaii's forests and mountains? In other words, are the Menehune stories Hawaiians' version of fairy tales? Or were the Menehune a race of real people who lived in Hawaii before the Polynesians arrived? And then it starts to discuss some of these things. When you're looking to understand the Menehune, the best place to start is with the structures they've been credited with building, which are the main evidence for their existence. One of their most well-known accomplishments is the intricate and complex Kikiola, I probably said that wrong, ditch on Kauai, which is also known as the Menehune Ditch. And I actually have another article about that. So this is actually a plaque that you will find on the Menehune Ditch. Let me see if I can click on this. No, I can't. It says, Menehune Ditch, the row of hewn stones along the inner side of the road is a remnant of one wall of an ancient watercourse, which is said to have been made by the Menehunes, Hawaiian dwarfs or brownies. And you can't really read the rest of what it says on there, so we'll just start reading this down here. You may have heard stories or mention of the Menehune, a mythical race of small people rumored to live on the island before colonization. There are strong opinions on both sides of the argument as to whether or not they did, or I should say do, exist. But one place leaves clues that ignite questions about the subject. It provides evidence that this small tribe even had a hand in irrigating the farms alongside the Waimea River. The Menehune Ditch would be easy to pass by if there weren't a sign pointing to it and a swinging bridge next door. The road to take it is the same one as our check-in office on Alawai Road, which eventually feeds into Menehune Road. As you are crossing the river bridge, getting into Waimea, I'm probably saying that wrong, apologies for that, you'll see our office right on the corner. Anyway, that doesn't matter. You take that road all the way until the pavement ends, where you will see the swinging bridge. On the post of the bridge is a sign pointing across the road to the Menehune Ditch. And so there is the plaque that I showed you. And again, oh, we can click on it here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read it at all. We'll find out. So we got to read up to here before. It says the stones were brought from Mokihana. There is an old saying. I'm not even going to try to say that. The shout of the Menehunes at, we'll say Kauai, startles the birds of Oahu. And the tablet was erected in 1926. So that's what it says there. It says you might feel a bit underwhelmed by this attraction, which is fair enough. And let me just show you another picture that I have before I get any farther into what it looks like. So this is part of it right here. And yeah, you might look at that and think, well, big deal. But the attraction here is more for the curious mind than a treat for the eyes. What you will see is a stone wall that looks very old, carrying water between itself and the cliff it runs parallel to. It looks similar to, I'm thinking that should be an irrigation tactic, to divert water to farms. Innocent enough, right? But then you see where the ditch leads. A tunnel that is so small that even crawling through it would be tight. It looks like an ancient stone form of the metal culverts we use today. Who could build this small tunnel? Tools of ancient Kauai were not advanced enough to drill that far into the rock, and the walls appear as though the walls were carved out by hand. And it says this tunnel is only 2 to 3 feet high. So indeed, who built this? Who dug this out? Could it be that the tunnel was built by a small race of ancient people who were able to assist in creating the complex irrigation system of ancient Hawaii? Or is there another explanation for why the tunnel was so small? So anyway, that I found to be very interesting. But let's go back over to the actual story of the Menehune. I know I'm like going all over the place today, but I just wanted you to see what it's talking about. As the story goes, Ola, we're still talking about the Menehune Ditch, the son of Chief Kualanui Pakumoku paid the Menehune 1 shrimp per Menehune to build the ditch in a single night. And here's what makes this particular structure so impressive. It required moving stones from a quarry 7 miles away. Additionally, archaeologists can't help but agree. The construction technique is intricate, unlike anything else you'll see in the Hawaiian Islands. So now we're going to move on to the next thing built by them. Menehune are also credited with building Kauai's Alacoco fish pond in a single night. And I will show you this fish pond. This is the pond that they are credited with building in a single night. Absolutely beautiful. Creating the fish pond required the construction of a lava rock wall that's over 900 feet long and 5 feet wide, using stones from a village nearly 25 miles away. By the way, if you're noticing a theme here, that these two stories both came from Kauai, you're not alone. And it just goes on to say that in Kauai, they tend to look at the Menehune as being supernatural, where in Oahu, they refer to them as being more human-like and were simply skilled craftsmen. So lastly, we're going to go to Necker Island. So Necker Island is one of the northwestern Hawaiian islands that doesn't show much evidence of long-term inhabitation by humans. However, Necker Island has its own version of Stonehenge with 52 archaeological sites and 33 ceremonial, and that right there, okay, that gets me thinking. When you see 33 anywhere, and then especially when it's accompanied by ceremonial, I start to think, because if you know anything about the number 33, you know that it is not just some innocent number that you happen to see everywhere. So maybe I'll get into the number 33 in a future video, but yeah, I saw that right away. So 33 ceremonial, I'm not even going to try, which include upright stones that are believed to have been arranged to line up with particular celestial bodies. According to legends from Kauai, these stones were placed by Menehune after they were chased off the island. To this day, no one is sure who built these structures. However, it's worth noting that the archaeological evidence for Menehune is thin, and that is really true for most of the little creatures. Again, we do have much more evidence of giants. No skeletal remains of a physically much smaller people have been found on any of the Hawaiian islands. And this is what they are referring to as the Stonehenge on Necker Island. Couldn't really get a better picture than that. It definitely looks like it's not as intricate as Stonehenge, but you would have to wonder how those stones were placed upwards like that. And I'm not sure if there is any more to it than that. This one is a little bit closer. And the stones are obviously not as big as Stonehenge. But since this island does show like little evidence of human habitation, you would still have to wonder who actually did that. So I just scrolled down a little bit. I always link all of the articles in the description box. So if you want to read any of these in full, you are welcome to do that. I just want to pick up right here. First of all, it's possible that the legends of the Menehune don't come from ancient Hawaiian tradition, as some have believed in the past. In fact, the Menehune may be a mythology that was entirely invented after Europeans arrived in Hawaii. Let me see. In the 50 years that followed, the Menehune evolved into the kind of cartoon character version we most often see, and that is really true. When I tried to look up photos of the Menehune, I got mainly cartoon-like figures. You'll see that here. Like that's really what you'll find when you look up the Menehune. I found a few more that seem to be more, realistic, but it's mainly cartoon characters. Now this is also really interesting if you ask me. That being said, when the original Polynesians arrived, they reportedly found dams, fish ponds, and roads already built. So this kind of reminds you of my last video, right? Where we were talking about accounts of there already being things built, entire cities even, in North America. So here, when the Polynesians arrived, they found dams, fish ponds, and roads already built. These were attributed to the Menehune, who may have been a race of people who arrived from the Marquesas Islands before the Polynesian arrivals. So I just found the Menehunes to be very interesting because we do have these structures that are attributed to them, and especially the first one that we talked about, the ditch. The Menehune Ditch, because you do have to wonder if it was made before a time that they had the proper tools for it, and if it was, so it said it was hand carved, and it's only 2 to 3 feet high. Who would get in there and be able to do that? Who would fit in there? We don't know. So this all brings me to something else. I found this on John Levi. Let's just start on the home page. And John Levi actually got this one from another channel. So I'm going to try to find that other channel, and I'm going to link both of them in the description box. but the Maryland Cryptid Museum. Now, when I saw this for the first time on John Levi, I was blown away because these were supposedly found here, like in a, I think that they were in a house that was sold and the box was found. Actually, let me go back to who this was supposedly about. So, you have stumbled upon the Maryland Cryptid Museum, the life's work of cryptonaturalist, fringe zoologist, and xenoarchaeologist Thomas Maryland. This is the online archive of his unique collection of specimens, creatures and artifacts thought to be nothing more than myth. It is a mystery that challenges our understanding of biology, chemistry, and the very laws of physics. But this is no fairy tale, for he was a scientist, and empirical evidence and rational thought hold sway here. There is a lot to see and read, so please take your time to peruse the website. For more information, please watch the informative video or continue reading below. And so now this is where we need to start thinking though. I'll pick back up here, but let's just look at some of the specimens. Because as soon as I saw these, first of all, I thought of Spiderwick Chronicles and Arthur Spiderwick, how he was able to capture and chronicle all of these things. And I was blown away at these. Let me see if I can get a bigger one. It's not letting me. Let me see. So this is the borrowers and the life cycle of the fairy. That's strange because it let me go on there before. Maybe if I click on here. Well, that was interesting. I got it to work though. But anyway, so this is, it says species, Homomimus alatus common fae. And a lot of times people associate fae with fairies, but it can actually be a lot of different things. The winged biped, and it's a carnivore. And we could be here all day looking at all of these. Let me click on this one. Look at the detail on this. Doesn't it remind you of Spiderwick Chronicles? The wings. I mean, if you compare this to the Atacama skeleton, these seem almost more realistic, I think, than the Atacama skeleton, which was actually found to have DNA. Here we have Draco Magnus, Vampire Anatomical Research Case, Infectee, yikes, Ichthyosapien, let's click on that. Wow. And so a lot of people actually believe that these are actual specimens that were found. And because they will ask, you know, how could anyone possibly have had enough time to create all of these? Because the fact is that if you click on each one, there are so many in every one. There's the infant Draco or dragon. And yeah. And yeah, there's writing for each one too. And so people are saying that why would someone do this, you know, and come up with all of these different sculptures and write up all of these histories on all of them in order to only fake it? And you know, that's a valid question, is why would someone do something like that? Because this is obviously so time consuming. And so you have to wonder, could this possibly be something that actually does show specimens like the Atacama skeleton? That one is the gnome. That is so creepy. Anyway, I don't know. And again, when I saw this, I was just blown away, and I thought, well, that's it. You know, these look really real, and they are definitely, you know, well, not definitely, but they're most likely going to be good evidence for the things that we call little creatures and other cryptids. But we're going to go back to the About page because I mentioned that. And right down here it says, my name is Alex C.F., and I am the curator and custodian of the Maryland Cryptid Collection, the study and documentation of the evolution and biology of unclassified species and research pertaining to prehistoric human and non-human civilization. And it just goes on and talks a little bit about Alex C.F. But if you actually look up who Alex C.F. is, He is an artist and he is an illustrator. And it says right here, the illustrations and books of Alex C.F. Alex is an illustrator, writer, and sculptor. So he is a sculptor as well. The main body of his artwork revolves around the world of the Orata, a fictional tale of animal mythology. So when you kind of look into who the curator is, you find out that it's likely that these are not real. I just found them to be really interesting and thought you might want to look at it. It might be even, fun to read as folklore. But yeah, there really are people though who truly believe that all of these are real. The Maryland Cryptid Museum. And I think it would be so cool if it is. But I mean, if we're to believe this, that Alex CF is actually an artist and a sculptor, and he actually sculpts about this specific type of thing, then it would make sense that this would not be something real. But it does give you food for thought. But anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, oh my word, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.